This tight tethers.
With your death, this nightmare finally ends.
My collection is about to grow. Give yourself to the void.
Feeding time.
Hello and welcome, Exiles, to my follow-up on the Galvanic Field Auto Bomber. Now, this is basically, I'm trying to take it to a planet-sized AoE. This isn't about practicality. This isn't about effective min-maxing. Essentially, when I was making this character, I was planning around making the radius as big as possible. And the way we do this is through the alt quality of Galvanic Field. The alt quality of Galvanic Field says plus 1.1 radius per 10% shock on ourselves. Now, we hit ourselves for a 105 shock. That means that 20 quality gives us a 1 meter radius. For those of you who have been around PoE for a while, you might be used to the units where they just say plus 1 radius, plus 2 radius. They have converted this into a standard system of meters, and 0.1 meter is the equivalent of the old 1 radius for those of you who are used to the old system. The new system, that's the conversion. That's basically to give you an idea of what's going on. But as far as this is concerned, when you take this quality and you juice it to the moon and you have 105 shock, it gets a little crazy because out the gate with a Dialis with 30 quality and an Ashes with 30 quality, we're at 0.5 meters per 10 shock. 100 shock effect, that's a 5 meter base radius. That is very large, and it gets even larger if you add in something like an enhance. You can get all the way up to 0.7 meters per 10% shock effect. Just to give you a little showcase of the differences in scale here, I'm going to go ahead and take off my Ashes. I'm going to swap my Galvanic Field so that way it's not getting the extra quality, and we just have the base 0.2 radius per shock effect. So I'll proc my Galvanic Field here, and this is what it looks like. It's not as big, it's not as juicy. Granted that I messed it up a little bit because I didn't have a full, hold on, that's not actually correct. I didn't have a full 105 shocks. Let me do that again real quick. That's what it would actually look like at base. Now, this character doesn't really have particularly a lot of AoE in the build. If you go through the tree, we have widespread right here, and that's about it. Well, technically, we have a little bit more because I have Forbidden Flesh and Flames with Instruments of Zeal. So if I shield charge and I get 4 Fanaticism charges, we will generate a, what's it called? A 75% AoE buff that lasts for 4 seconds. The idea is, since most of the time I'm just shield charging around the map, I have very good uptime on it, and if I wanted to, I could probably fit in an extra aura due to the 75% reduced mana cost that comes with the Forbidden Flesh and Flame. Ultimately, if I was trying to make this character a practical, best as I could make it, I probably wouldn't spend my Forbidden Flesh and Flame jewels just getting a little bit extra AoE, because as you will see here, the AoE is kind of just ridiculous regardless of that. So, let's go ahead and add a 30 quality to this, which will mean we go from a 0.2 radius per 10 shock to a 0.3. And let's see what it looks like when we pop that. Obviously, gets a much bigger. And then if I swap this over to the enhanced slot, that's another 30 quality. And instead of hitting just one more 0.1 meter, it hits 0.2 because we were already 10 quality over, and the breakpoints at every 20 quality, and this gets us to an even 80 quality for 0.5 meters per radius. Now, this is what I was mapping with in the showcase. Originally, I had planned to do enhance, but the radius gets so big, it's off my screen. I can't even see it, and so I figured, why lose a support gem when I don't need to? But I'm going to showcase minimizing and stretching my screen to kind of showcase how big this gets, just in perspective. So now we'll go ahead and we'll pop this with the new radius, which is the 105 shock. This is with the 0.5 meters. And again, this is with a tree with 6% AoE or whatever we have. We have maybe there's somewhere I forgot about, but I'm pretty sure my AoE investment is almost non-existent. So keep that in mind. And then of course we'll pop it now where we get the Fanaticism buff going. And just to give you a context of it, it just goes off our screen. And you can see that there's maybe the very edge of the radius, I'm not sure, right there, because there's typically 4 circles. There's 1 outer, 2, 3, 4. Basically, if you count out, that will tell you the very edge. But that's what we were playing with. It's pretty much completely out of our screen. And then if you want to get a little bit crazier, you add in the enhance for another 2 breakpoints. And then maybe if you really cared, you could also add in an increased AoE. So if we did something like this, this would be the baseline where it'd be 1 radius, 2 radius, 3, and there's going to be another line that's farther off the screen. So now we're getting big enough. I'll go ahead and do a little, basically, it's a cheat way to stretch your screen to see a little bit farther than you would, extend your field of view. And the way you do it is you go from all the way to windowed mode. And essentially what I'm going to do here is I'm going to shrink my screen. And what that does is you'll see there starts being black bars on the side here. What essentially we're trying to do is get it to the point where we can see our maximum field of view, basically simulating a, what's the word? We're essentially simulating a widescreen monitor, and this gives you a little bit better idea. This is something I would do when I played Hitless Run Sanctums. It was very important to know where all the guards are and what type of guards there were. So any competitive advantage, like being able to see a bit farther off screen to see what they're doing, to see if they're trying to do some sort of attack, like if the fire archer was going to try to do his little backflip and shoot us off screen, something like that. This helps you do that. But for this case, we're just doing it to showcase Galvanic Field here with the all quality and the large radius. You see 1 radius, 2 radius, 3, and then all the way out there you should see a 4th line, and that should be the outer circle. Now granted, this is without our fanaticism up, so we'll proc fanaticism real quick just to showcase. This would be the case of where you have 75 AoE plus like 60 AoE from the support gem, and then like 6% AoE on the tree. Granted, you could get much bigger than this with more AoE investment. This is what I was trying to do, just to get a nice mix of quality, enhancing it, and still having a decently viable character. So I'll go ahead and I will shield charge a few times. I'll generate those fanaticism charges, and then we will go ahead and we will proc fanaticism. And you'll see, I don't know if we can even see the smaller radius, and you can see when fanaticism drops off, you can see it shrink down, and that is the planet size galvanic field. I'm going to go ahead and get my settings back to my normal windowed full screen that I normally use. And that's the idea behind making a massive AoE. Now, even though we have a huge AoE, there are some limiting factors for Galvanic Field. Galvanic Field itself, it doesn't innately have a chain unless you get, for example, the Helmet enchant. That gives you a chain, or you add in chain support. Without adding in any chains, Galvanic Field has a hard limit of how many targets it can hit. It can hit once every 0.1 second, and it can only hit the same target once every 0.5 seconds. So ideally, your skill can only hit the same target twice per second, which isn't great for DPS, but there is some tech to get around it. But first off, let me talk about the once per or 10 times hits per second. This is limiting you to how many monsters can you kill, and the way you get around this is through 2 sources. You either go into additional chains like I have here, an Awakened Chain support and the chain on my helmet, which that's what I cleared the map with in the showcase, or you add in some form of explode. Now I think I have an Oriath's End in here, hopefully, and this will give you a good example. I'm not quite capped for Oriath's End on my res. I'm a little bit undercapped on cold because I don't have my res balanced, but this will still showcase the idea. And the thing is, when you add in an explode, I will do it for clearing this map. You'll see a bit of a better clear speed because you will notice I'll pop a monster, it'll explode, I'll pop another monster, it'll explode, and then a pack of 10 monsters for the most part will die, and it's a bit more efficient in monsters dying before you're seeing them type of thing. So that's the idea. With Galvanic Field, you kind of want either a source of explode or a bunch of chains and hitting pretty hard. That's the idea you want to go with. Okay, so that solves your clear. Having extra chains, having explosion, that helps your clear. When it comes to single target, this is very interesting tech that Bopes taught me, and I think maybe other people know about. But actually what you can do is you can have Hydrosphere within Arcanist brand with a level 1 Hydrosphere and a level 2 Hydrosphere. And the weird thing that this does is the Hydrospheres will overwrite each other. Hydrosphere itself has a innate feature where it can only get hit and chained off of once per second. But if I overwrite Hydrosphere with another Hydrosphere and I keep having them overwrite each other, I actually get additional chains from Galvanic Field from those Hydrospheres overriding each other and creating a new Hydrosphere. Essentially, instead of hitting like twice per second, I can hit additional times on top of that because I'm hitting the Hydrosphere and it's chaining back to the original target that has a limit of how many times I can hit it. All right, so I think I went into most of the tech here. I need to take a drink real quick. Now, I think I went into most of the tech here. My big takeaway from this is I like going for this for shield charge, but I'm pretty confident just doing a mana stacking Archmage, or not Archmage, but Indigon, Hierophant, Voltaxic Rift in your main hand approach. I do believe that actually is probably just a better build all around. Because one, you can have 2 offhand weapons, both with the Spectral Spirits, which means you get twice the self hits. So it's going to be a bit more consistent on that self shock. And then on top of that, you can also cheese a longer duration. So say, for example, we put our 6-link of these gems all in the bow here. In our offhand, we could have a Galvanic Field in the same slot it is originally, along with a increased duration support and something like an efficacy support, and you could snapshot that duration. So you could get an extra 100% increased skill effect duration without investing into it on your build for having a better high quality uptime that where you don't have to weapon swap as much. It just feels a bit better to play. Right now, I'm investing into a bunch of skill effect duration between this cluster and Unnatural Instinct just to make it so it has a decent duration. But on the bow version, you wouldn't have to do that, and you could go into more stuff like the mana stacking Arcane Cloak Indigon. It just hits really hard. That being said, I think there would be great use cases for other ways to build this character if they fix the boot bug with that's currently allowing discharge to exist in its current state. Because essentially right now, if I want to do a weapon where I'm not using Voltaxic, I have to do Scales of Justice. If I want to do an unaffected by shock boot swap to Voltaxic, it doesn't work because of the boot bug as far as I understand it. And so if they patch that bug, it might work to go unaffected by shock boots, where you have attribute requirement that you lose some attribute that unequips the boots when you weapon swap, and that way it will work with a Voltaxic in your offhand. But right now with the boot bug, it doesn't work, so keep that in mind. Anyways, where am I all going with this? My TLDR is, I think the mana setup is a stronger setup, but I'm hopeful that in the future, if they fix that bug, I want to try Galvanic Field again without Scales of Justice. The big problem with Scales of Justice is it's super limiting. It's very hard to invest into mana and keep it within 500 of your life pool and have a character that makes sense. I end up spending on this tree multiple mana tattoos like so, along with even anointing a tattoo. Altogether, I think I spend something like 12, 13, 14 passives just trying to invest into mana, and I have to try to get mana on my gear just to try to balance out my life. I can't spec into efficient life nodes. Like, all day long, I would want to spec into this 2.0 to Purity Flesh, but I can't do it because it'll raise my life too high, and it just puts me in an awkward space. So, hopefully, they fix that bug in the future, and I can make a setup that isn't necessarily, like, I like being able to shield charge as an auto bomber, so I don't want to do the bow setup, and that's why I'm hoping that they fix that bug, and I can maybe do it in a future league where I don't have to do Scales of Justice, and instead do an unaffected by shock boot swap. Another thing I should say is I have 3 Reckless Defenses in this build. I didn't realize it at the time when I started setting up for Reckless Defense, but I could have gone for the self-curse conductivity if I hadn't planned around an Inquisitor. I even made my belt with reduced curse effect while on Conk Ground. So effectively, if I wanted to self-curse with conductivity to have a much higher chance to shock and then save myself the jewel sockets, I couldn't do that because I already invested into going with a build where I had Pious Path and where I had the reduced curse effect. So that was a bit of a shoot myself in the foot situation. All right, let's go ahead and showcase Clear of Hydra with the Explode Flaskin and give you one final take of this build. This is only level 90 character. I didn't play it a ton. I'm not gonna lie, I'm getting a little bit more burnt out as the league goes on, and so I didn't play this one as much until I got a little bit ready to play the next build. You know, I got tired of doing the weapon swap because sometimes if it doesn't tick, because I only have 30% self-shock with 3 hits each, it's not always guaranteed I self-shock, so it was a little bit tedious to play, and that is due to my own fault of how I set it up. Now, you probably notice a difference in this clear versus the previous clear, which is the explode means we see monsters a whole lot less because for the most part, the explode is taking care of them. You'll notice that I have kind of a feeling for my Galvanic Field. I think it lasts about 10 seconds. So I know going up into about 10-second range, I'm like, okay, I need to re-proc my Galvanic Field and then redo the weapon swap. With the, what's it called? The Instruments of Zeals, whatever it's called, the thing I'm stealing that gives AoE and it gives reduced mana cost. It also gives a 75% cast speed buff. So normally, when I go to reset on my Galvanic Field, it actually doesn't feel too bad to re-proc because I have that cast speed left over still sitting around. And so this is what it looks like on a Hydra. He's going to go into his phase. We'll re-proc our Galvanic Field, and we'll see where he spawns. Reprocker Galvanic Field, and hopefully finish him off. And you'll see there, I made a big misplay, which is I procced a small shocker myself. I think it was because I was out of my Vessel of Vinctor. I think it ran out or something. I didn't have 100% uptime. I didn't kill the boss fast enough. He disappeared because Hydra has a phase. Definitely a misplay by my part. So that's something that can't happen if you play like this. Not my greatest showing, but I'm not really interested in. I don't know. I think if I make mistakes, I would rather showcase weaknesses of the build than try to like cover them up and like re-record. It's not worth it to me. But yeah, that is a weakness of this build is Vessel of Vinctor. It isn't perfect uptime. It kind of requires some level of thought in when you're proccing your Galvanic Field correctly, because you need to plan around. Hello? Sorry about that. That was a phone call from my wife, and I am going to pick that up when she calls me. So, anyways, we'll continue running back down the Walk of Shame. I also realize now my filter is basically the SSF filter because I was doing the Krangled event. Speaking of Krangled event, I'm actually having a decent amount more fun than I had last time, and I think that's because there's a little bit better tree setups, and I'm doing a bow Hyro. Hyro is actually like super cracked. And there's the Hydra. If I just like, I don't know, played the fight a little bit better, maybe I would have killed him. Who knows? Anyways, point is, that's the planet-sized Galvanic Field, and I'll probably be making some videos on the character I'm doing in Krangled League to give guys a bit of an idea of what is possible for a decent bow character. I'm going to try to make that hopefully tomorrow morning. As always, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Take care, Exiles, and peace down.